Hi, and welcome to a brand new episode of Sipping Tea with Suzanne. I am your fabulous host, Positively Suzanne, and I'm so excited. I've been trying to do this for over 3 years. Yeah, I'm gonna call her out. I've been trying to get the
She
wonderful, the
ain't wrong. She ain't
fabulous,
wrong. She ain't
the
wrong.
extremely busy and active Reverend Dr. Sarai Rivera Sandoz. How are
I do.
you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to finally be here, loving this space and loving being with you.
All right, thank you so much. I'm so glad that our schedule finally aligned and allowed
Yes.
us to meet because it's been busy.
Yeah.
Yes, all right, thank you. So, thank you for those who tune in week after week. I appreciate you. If you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's Positive Vibe Studio. If you're on Facebook, please follow me. It's Positively Suzanne. So, thank you so much for tuning in week after week. For those of you who are watching for the first time, thank you. I also appreciate you. Big shout out to our executive producer, Paul Anderson, for making the magic happen week after week. And he's also our sponsor because, as you know, he's a photographer. So, Paul Anderson Photography, please support him. He does headshot, weddings. I was going to say funerals, but he does do funerals. We've done a few. and birthday parties, whatever it is, please contact him for your photography needs. But I'm just so excited. I know it's the holiday season. So, I do want to, just give a special shout out to those who are going through the holiday season, missing someone. I certainly am missing a few people in my life. So, I know there might be some extra pressure on us to be cheerful and joyful, and I get all that, but don't forget to take a moment to truly just breathe and appreciate and show yourself grace because life is life out here. So I'm super excited.
I'm excited too. Me too.
Yes, yes, yes. And we got to shout out the shirt.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah. I thought it'd be good.
yes.
I kind of God, goals, grind, and growth.
All of that. I'm about my God. I'm
I
about
know.
my
I
God.
know. I was like, what am I gonna wear? Because I have to I'm coming with Miss Fabulous here, the queen. I said, and I was running around. I said, okay, I gotta go with this. I had
Yeah,
the message.
yeah. So I am like, "Oh, I know this, like, this is a shoe game queen that I'm like, let's live it up. Like, let's hold the shoe because it's like, look at that. I was like, I know she's gonna come with some shoes today. And I'm like, my only regret is that we're not the same size.
I know, I know, because I'd be after some of yours too,
Right?
girl. I'd be after some of
Yeah.
yours. I ain't playing.
What's your shoe size?
An 8.
Okay, yeah, dude. I'm gonna love it. So
Yeah, I'd be after some of
because
yours,
I know
girl.
sometimes you have them and you're like, you're donating. I was like, I'm not even sure. Because girl,
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
been an 8 since I was 8. So
Yeah, I'll retire some and
yeah.
donate them after a while.
Yeah,
Yes, I'll recycle and, I'll donate them forward. Yeah,
absolutely. I did that the other day. I mean, to make room for new ones. But anyway, so
exactly. I'm with you, girl. I'm with you.
yeah, but no, and then just yeah, but I mean, after a while, like you haven't worn it for a while, you're like,
Mhm.
let me just give it to somebody and
Mhm.
reach
Yeah,
out. But no,
definitely.
shoe game always on point.
Yeah, yeah, it's my thing. I love shoes.
Yeah, so it's so funny. So while we were putting the information underneath, and I'm like, I don't even know what to put you because you truly are a Renaissance woman. You
Yeah.
are a reverend, you're a doctor, you're a former councilwoman, you're a teacher, you're a facilitator, you're a community leader, you're an activist. Like you do so much
Yeah.
things, and it's just like it's hard. Like I had to put something in the box.
Yes, yes, yes.
I did, but you do so many things. And I mean, girl, you look so good.
Oh,
Like
thank you.
your age, we can't tell your age, but like you've accomplished so much and done so much, and you're also just getting started.
Mhm.
So it's gonna be hard for me to figure out where to start today, but let's just
Mhm.
try to. You are a proud,
Mhm.
proud Afro Latina.
Very, very proud. I'm very proud of my roots. I identify as Afro Boricua, which Afro is from our African descent. My great great grandmother, Bernardina, was a slave, and my grandfather was a slave owner. Interestingly enough, although it's not really positioned that way, but it's
Mm,
interesting as we've checked the archive, we couldn't find a full marriage certificate. So we've been doing some of that work. And then Boricua, because we're from the indigenous of the Taino. So it's kind of really before the colonization, which called it Puerto Rico, but it was called island of Borinquen, which is Boricua was the name of the island, and Tainos were the indigenous inhabitants. So I proudly, feel like we're not one race.
Mm-hmm.
My ethnicity falls within that, and so and there's such a mix of both
Mm-hmm.
that is within my culture, what we do, family, food. We have even our wording, some of our wording comes from the African just descent, as well as some of the wording comes from the Taino. Some of the food we eat is very much a mixture. When I was in certain parts of different countries in Africa, Rwanda and in Burundi specifically, it was interesting to see some of the food, and they were like, "You eat that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then I'm showing them pictures of weed, and we're like, "We eat the same." I'm like, "Cause we're like the same, right?" Like, so it was really interesting. And when I showed them even like the bomba en plena, which is how, back in in the time of slavery, people, the hymnals and the songs, and even
Mm-hmm.
just being able to kind of tell the story. Bomba en plena was a way that people, it was the dancing and the African and the stories and how they would tell one story from one to the next as well. So it's a very similar history. It's just that it's in the Caribbean, much like, as you know, being
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean yourself. Um, and so yeah, so I proudly identify with that and not the colonization of it. But
Okay. Very distinct, and proudly announce it, like, and I'm
yeah,
really claiming both your heritage, and
yeah,
just really um advocating for it all. And it's funny, you mentioned like the food, the similarities, because it's like, so in
mm-hmm,
Jamaica it's like rice and peas, and it's rice and
yeah,
beans, and
yeah,
it's like the same thing.
yeah,
So recently, a friend of mine, Miguelina, who a dear
yeah,
friend of mine, she was telling me, like, she sent me this video where it was this Jamaican guy, and they were showing food like from the DR, and they were
yes,
doing rice and peas and plantains and oxtail, and
yes.
he, I thought we were the only
No,
one.
girl, we've been to oxtail too. We've been to oxtail. No, listen, for real. And as you all have chitlins, we have molleja. It's very similar.
I
It's
said,
all,
what is
yeah. Yeah,
this?
because different parts, just like north and south. I
Yeah.
think is, we've created this environment of like, I think it's one of the challenges of being multiracial, being from a community that's multiracial, is
Hmm.
that we have to fight with the colonization because, the distinct is
Hmm.
that white is better. And
Yeah.
so most of the people colonized, and that was part of a survival. So really,
Hmm.
yes, I'm much more white passing than my husband, or much
Hmm.
more white passing than
Hmm.
a couple of my siblings. If I
Hmm.
straighten my hair, if I try to bleach my skin a little bit or lighten up makeup, I could definitely probably be white passing versus a couple of my siblings would not, or my husband,
Hmm.
there's no denial. But yeah, people ask like all the time, they'll say my hair. And I said, well, this is a perfect example of both, because my
Yeah.
mother had very, 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 very curly hair,
Yeah.
very kind of coily hair.
Yeah.
And my father had very straight indigenous hair.
Yeah.
So as a result, every time somebody says, "Oh, my hair," I'm like,
Mm.
thanks to mom and dad. I wish I could take credit, but it's all
Yeah.
on
And it's
them.
told
Thank
me when you
you.
were gorgeous hair, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So something interesting, because I think as adults we're aware, right?
Hmm.
But as children sometimes it's harder. Did
Yeah.
you challenges of growing up, having to kind of
Oh.
navigate where, yeah, you could pass, but you know who you are and you don't
Hmm.
want to pass. And there's some that want to pass. So I think, because even within my whole sphere, in the black diaspora, like sometimes I get
Hmm.
people will say to me like, "Oh, you're trying so hard to act white," and then like then to some of the black people
Hmm.
like, "I'm not black enough," and I'm
Oh God,
like
yes.
you do you, like I'll have time. I'm not navigating. I know who I am. I'm a black woman. I'm a Caribbean
Hmm.
woman, and I am proud. Like you fight your own inner demons.
Hmm.
But what was that like for a child? Just having both these very distinct
Hmm.
ethnicities, and then
Yeah, I think, I was really blessed in the fact that, so growing up, I grew up at a time where obviously like white is, to be white is better, to have straight hair.
mm,
I didn't really accept, my curly hair, because people, I had bad hair. Growing up, I
absolutely,
was told, you're
absolutely.
bad, you have bad hair unless you have straight hair. It was called pelo malo,
Mm,
you have pelo malo, this was bad hair.
mm,
So I straightened out, always wore it up. And so that was like a big
mm,
issue of my identity.
mm,
I struggled with that for a long time in my
yeah.
life, and then, I think I grew up in an era here in Worcester. So first we came from New York, in a community where the Latinos and Blacks were very united because we were fighting the same struggles.
Mm,
I mean, I'm the youngest of five, and I'm the only one in my immediate family that was born under the Civil Rights Act. When you think
mm,
about it, everybody else was born before the Civil Rights
before.
Act.
Oh.
under segregation. And this is so people act all this stuff. I'm like, this isn't far removed from here. My sisters talk to me about the bus strike and all of that, and coming together, and so kind of those stories, and then coming here there was few of us, and so I grew up in a community where it was very mixed, but predominantly Latino and Black. So a lot of us, there wasn't that many of us, we stuck together, like the
Mm.
community. So it's interesting, when I ran for office, people were like, oh, I wonder, like, how did you cross over and have so much relationship in the Black community? I'm like, because I grew up here with
You know,
we that's been my people. We've been together. Like, there wasn't any of that kind of like Black and Latino, because we were all in
yeah.
the same kind of
Mm.
struggle. I think a lot of it began to form a little bit after that, but I mean, we
Mm.
were kind of in the same struggle, and we all hung
Mm.
out together. We all like chilled together.
Yeah.
So we all got bussed in together. So that
Mm.
was the case. So then when I became clergy, like, I had a really good relationship among the Black clergy. I had very good
Mm.
relationship among the Black clergy here in the city
Mm.
of Worcester. So it was
Yeah.
like, to me, it was never, I was never really on the out.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's so important that like we all got to be together.
Mhm.
It breaks my heart when I see like, and there are systems in place, obviously, that's going to try to get the Latinos and the Blacks to
Mhm.
fight against each other, because the biggest way to conquer someone
Mhm.
is to separate them, right? And to have them in the minority, like, because if they recognize that if they collaborate and band together, their collective power would be so much greater and it would be a threat to others,
A hundred
right?
percent.
So I think there has been systems in place and people in places that have consistently tried to separate. And I think like we've just got to, if Black shows up for Latinas and Latinos shows up for
Mhm.
Black and united. But girl, you've
Yeah,
navigated
and I
that
think the whole
space,
thing
yeah.
with the colorism, and
Oh,
my community, has responsibility, just like in the issue of colorism, like
mm,
the whole concept of like denying that part, right? Because if you
mm,
embrace that part of the Blackness, then it's like
yeah,
it's looked down upon. So
yeah,
and so people don't want to embrace that, and it's the
mm,
whole issue of colorism. When I started dating my husband, I had people that came up to me that were like,
mm,
"Oh, why would you date someone that's dark skinned?
yeah.
You should be dating someone lighter skin," and they call it mejorar la raza, to better your race, right? So that
So your
way,
kids could be even
yeah,
lighter.
lighter,
Yeah.
yeah, that whole issue of like, and that was like, so kind of like, oh, I'm not Black. I'm like, what do you think that is? Like, what part of that? What part of that is
Yeah.
that? And so to me, I wanted to embrace that and be proud of that, as well
Mm,
as my indigenous. And I wanted to teach my children that, because it was visible. I mean, when you look at them, like, there's no denying that you got, is
mm-hmm.
there. It's all over your features. Even my youngest biological son, who's actually pretty fair skinned, I just call him, he looks just like high yellow,
Yeah.
right? He's
Yeah.
like, but there's no
Yeah.
denying. And then he went to school in the South. So it was like, yeah, no, mom, I'm just here. I'm just Black.
Yeah. Think sometimes like they just make it so hard for folks to navigate the spaces. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, like you're Black and you're dark. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I do believe from the very beginning of time, and I've like every research I've done, every conversation I've had with people like you who have certainly done a lot more work in the field, like they talk about, there's always been this anti-Blackness, like
Yeah.
even within Blacks.
Yes, that's why I was so fascinated when I went to Cuba for the first time. I've never been to a community that embraced Blackness the
Mm,
way, like, they didn't understand the separation. And that
yeah,
was, if there was one good thing that happened during the revolution,
yeah.
was that it was like the whole issue of like Blackness was just at the same level, because
Hmm.
before that was so different prior to like the
Hmm.
revolution. But even when I went to run, like, to me, this was all our communities, all I knew, right,
Yeah.
was us together.
Mm.
And I remember being in a group of Latinos and somebody saying, well, no, let them get their own candidate. Like, I couldn't stand for the Black community, or other marginalized community like myself, because, and literally somebody said, let them get their own candidate. I said, yeah, no, I'm everybody. Like,
Like you,
this is what I am. Like, how can I? Yeah,
yeah, like asking you to rip out a part of you, right?
yeah,
Oh my goodness, girl,
yeah.
we could talk about anti-racism. I would love to. And Ibram X Kendi, anybody's watching this show and connected with him, I weird connect, but we'll figure it out. I would love to
Mhm.
talk to him because his book, about teaching anti-racism
Mhm.
is just fascinating. And, I would really, truly love to listen, learn, and absorb. So if
Yeah.
you know him, hook a sister up.
Definitely, definitely. I will tell you one of the people you could talk to really well about that really well is actually my son Caleb.
Oh,
He's
I
very
don't
well
know
versed.
him.
Yeah, he's very well versed. There's a lot of
Mhm.
training on that, and he's very well versed. And he's grew up,
Done.
and he's had an opportunity to do some racial relation work when he went to Namibia and South
Okay.
Africa, and
Okay.
um, I think some of the stuff that he studied, but he's doing that kind of work now too. So
Awesome. See?
yeah, yeah,
It's simple. So no, I think you weren't trying to check me, but I'm glad that you did because I was like, here I am searching outside when like
yeah,
I
yeah. No,
literally
and good too. Look, don't get
yeah,
me
no,
wrong, but I'm like,
I'm
but
still
I
gonna
mean,
get
yeah,
it
yeah,
to know that, Caleb. So
yeah.
Caleb, so
I just put you on blast, Caleb. So
so
you're
you
gonna have
give him a
to.
shout. I know him, and he knows I would come up to him and say
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's wonderful. No, thank you so much for that. But like so throughout our conversations, you've dropped a couple of hints about being clergy and
Mhm.
being councilwoman. And in the beginning, I talked about just some of the many hats
Yeah.
that you. So when you just started, like, what did you think you wanted to be? Like, what did you start out as?
I mean, growing up, I just wanted to make it sound so corny, but it was so true. I
No.
knew that I had like a destiny, right? That I was a divine creation by a divine creator. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but
Mm,
I knew that all I knew is that I knew that when I left this earth, I wanted that my life mattered, at some way or form, that I made a difference. And so I went into the field. I really love psychology and looked into it when I was in high school and felt that that was the best way and I started off um, educated in psychology and working in the field of mental health. And I started working, I'm gonna date myself, but I started working during the time of deinstitutionalization and the HIV and AIDS epidemic, which is,
yeah.
we saw so much issues of discrimination.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, yes, I know I had all the book smarts that they had taught me about the mental health and the diagnosis and all the symptoms and all of that. But no one was really talking about health disparities and discrimination. And I began to see it, right? Because in the midst of that HIV and AIDS epidemic, that was brutal.
Mhm.
I mean, that's something that I live very vividly. And I remember watching that show Pose and just watching it because I felt like I said, "Oh my God, I remember that. Like I
Mhm.
remember that, right?
Wow.
Those moments." And then during also the deinstitutionalization that we were closing down the asylums, but we were essentially creating a homeless population. We were not treating our people with major mental illness with the dignity and humanity that they deserved. And we're not creating, we had the idea of community health providing, providers, but we never got it properly funded at the federal level to really get through, which is why we began to see an excessive amount of homeless. And we also began to see closing down of like psychiatric, health centers that were for people that were underinsured or not insured. And we began to see closings of psychiatric beds because they weren't giving the same amount of reimbursement as medical surge beds. And that became just a major challenge. Never mind, add that for people who look like us. That was a whole other situation. People misdiagnosed and not understood therapy that wasn't culturally competent. So I'm entering into this world um, that I knew there was about the book smart and I knew about major depression and schizophrenia and all that, but it was like now you got to talk to someone who's schizophrenia and is Latino and doesn't have the language and
Mhm.
can't find the psychiatrist to speak the language or can't find or someone who's black and is being discriminated. Just all these issues that were, the HIV and people who are from LGBT community or trans, like what that was and seeing. I mean, when people somebody died during that time, we couldn't even get a funeral parlor to take the body. I mean,
Oh
the only
my.
person who was doing it was Grant Putnam. At the
Yeah.
time, we couldn't even get someone to just lay someone to rest. It was just a horrible, difficult, difficult time. That time entered like needle exchange and then began to understand that I began to work with youth and families and began to see the disparity, the way our kids were treated, the way our families were treated. And then that led me into the scope of policy and activism
Mhm.
because it was almost like you couldn't just do the work and ignore the fact that you were trying to do for your clients, but you had all these barriers. So now I found myself from going from micro working with the individual to doing more macro work, which eventually led my steps to being in office and
Okay.
becoming a policy and legislator.
Okay. It's like, and you're talking to me and like I'm getting chills of just that time. And,
Hmm.
let's give a shout out to Graham Putnam. They were very, very,
Oh God, yes, I can't even tell
I've
you.
heard really great things about them and they were so kind, when my dad passed away in
Hmm.
2018 and, like the whole situation. But just to think about their funeral homes denying burying someone because of a stigma or
Hmm.
perceived fear, and it's just like, oh my god, girl, you've been in this fight for a minute.
Yeah, yeah, even trying to place people properly to the proper hospitalization when they were, the decrease, and then like like services. We were in a group that advocated for translation in hospital care. So I started practicing and doing this work before interpretation
Hmm.
was a must
Hmm.
before. So there was a group of us that worked together to make sure that there was bilingual services, interpretive services during medical procedure, because that didn't exist. So imagine, for example, I can't speak the language and my child is, true story actually has happened to me, and I'm 12 years old and I'm hearing the doctor tell my sister, which I'm there present, about my mother's cancer. And I'm 11 and a half, 12 years old. I mean, and this is something that now has to be told to her. It's like the complexities of all this stuff, and children translating or family. It just was, and so working towards that, and now we have that in the hospitals, in the clinic. But I remember once upon a time that wasn't even the case, or in
Hmm.
schools, or fighting for bilingual education. I remember being part of a group here, and very active group fighting for
Hmm.
bilingual education. So yeah, the struggle's been real. But I see it. I'm like, boy, it's a lot of water run under this bridge, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, like, well, let me ask you this, and like, how do you remain invested and connected, because you went through those struggles, and I think we went through a
Mm-hmm.
little period like, we're okay, and I think like I mean, we were never okay, but like things
Mm-hmm.
were looked
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they
yeah,
were shifting, and then
yeah.
like the pandemic happened and we've seen this increase in
Mm-hmm.
homelessness, and we see the increase in racial
Mm-hmm.
profiling, we've seen the increase in mental illness, and just all these things, and I really think we're at such a critical point. And I'm full of hope and positivity, but like there is a lot of individuals
Mm-hmm.
that need help. So
Yeah.
how do you remain motivated to stay in the fight? Like, it's not undoing what y'all did back in the day. It's still relevant because that
Mm-hmm.
fight was needed,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like a whole brand new fight.
Yeah, and it's almost like, it's funny because some of us, I'm still in contact with many of the folks that I did work with back in the day. Because when you're in that struggle, you form a bond, and so there's many people. Shout out to them, people like Joanne Calista and Leo and Sarah Trillo, Brenda Jenkins. A lot of people
Yeah,
did, back
Jet
in the
Brenda's been
day.
around for a
Yeah,
minute.
people doing, got to
Yeah,
give that shout out. And there's a lot of other people too. I
yeah.
would go on a list, but and some of us would catch up. We're like, I swear, we're having deja vu. We were having deja vu
That's how
because we
I
were talking about
feel.
food insecurity, which the Meals on Wheels started during the HIV and AIDS epidemic.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
during that time. The issue of like vaccination and trial and all that, and who was getting access, who wasn't, very similar. I swear I was having like a deja vu
That's how I
moment.
feel
Yeah, we
sometimes.
were having like deja and some of those conversations, and I said these are the same type of conversations, and I think we take a few steps forward and then kind of go back.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, we hold on to the small victories that we have, but
absolutely.
then know that it's not going to be over, because unfortunately, remember, these systems were built to keep us out. They weren't built
Absolutely.
for people like you and I, right?
No.
We still have the US, and even here in Worcester, we still have a large infant mortality rate. We still
Mm,
struggle with women dying at
hmm.
childbirth, and predominantly women of color.
Yeah.
So these systems weren't made for us. So
Hmm.
essentially, what we're doing is coming in and dismantling, tearing down these
Hmm.
systems, fighting against powers that are trying to still hold them up, right?
Absolutely.
So we're trying to dismantle and fight at the same time and
Hmm.
rebuild.
Hmm.
So we're fighting, we're dismantling and rebuilding,
Jesus.
because we're trying to. And so that's why I think you see a lot of us get exhausted,
Mm.
and really just worn out, because we're doing those three things simultaneously to get to where we are, to get to some level of just fairness. And all we're saying is, I don't want more than you. I'm not trying to be better than you. I want to be treated as equal
That's
as
it.
you. That's it. That if I have health care, that if you have health care, I have health care.
Mm,
That if you have a place to live, I have a place to live. That if you
mm,
have something to eat that is healthy and nutritious, that I have the same
mm,
adequate. And that's just, we continue to legislate humanity. And
mm,
that's where I think that's where my spirituality comes in
mhm,
because, I've been taught to love my neighbor, right? That Jericho road. I'm not there to ask them any questions except help them out,
mhm,
regardless of who they are, where they come from, what their situation is.
mhm.
So doing my part. I don't have to do everything, but I definitely have to do something.
No, absolutely. I think we were placed on this earth to be a blessing to
Exactly.
others.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We can't. And, one of the things you had said earlier about, your purpose, you wanted to leave this earth, like,
Mhm.
knowing that it mattered.
Yes.
And I think our life matters when we make an impact on others, like when we help others, when we change
Mhm.
lives. I'm not saying, yeah, life matters, but like, I think when your purpose is around helping others,
Yeah.
living and finding space and equality and help and
Yes.
love, I think it's so important. And then, your life does matter even more
Yeah.
because we've helped others. So,
Yeah, that was really my life purpose. And I look at it now, to me, as I now I'm 56, very proud of that, saying just turned 56 in
well,
October.
Whitney Houston says, and we still look good.
You know what I'm saying? Um, and I want to be able to, that for me and my faith, I believe that one day I will go before the Lord, and I want to
Mm,
make sure that, and I've envisioned, and I did a talk like this, that I go before a treasure chest, for example, and when I open it up, it's empty. And he says, well, everything that was for you, you access, you have it. And then I want to make sure that I'm all used up, that everything that was
mm,
deposited in me
mhm,
is all used up. That when I take my last breath, I'm all used up. I've left everything here. I've left it all here on this earth
mm.
for the service and the better. It may sound cliche, but
It
that's really
doesn't.
my heart's desire.
That's your truth.
Yeah,
That's your truth.
yeah,
Like the expression, well done, my good and faithful
yeah. No, that's what I
servant.
always say. And every time I
That
wanted to quit, I'm like, okay, I just want to hear good and faithful servant. But Lord, you better help me out. I'm about to quit and go
like
live somewhere. Go live somewhere real far where I don't have to be dealing with people. I ain't gonna lie, man. There's a whole bunch of times I wanted to quit.
listen, service of others. It's just like
Mhm.
it sometimes it can be thankless, right? And you're right. That's
Mhm.
when you call on your spirituality because then you'll be like, Lord, really, this is my
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. I remember one time I was like really on the down and out, just feeling like that sense of betrayal. And then kind of
Mm.
went to that story when after the resurrection that Jesus talking to Peter is like, if you love me, take care of my sheep. You love me,
Yeah.
take care of my sheep, And it's funny, he didn't say, do you love my sheep? He said, do you love
Love
me?
me.
Because you all know that once in a while we want to knock those sheep upside their head.
Because
We
we're
ain't
like,
loving.
no,
I'm gonna be
no.
honest. I'm gonna do it because I love you, Jesus.
Yeah,
I'm a
that
little salty right now. Yeah.
that's why he said that.
Yeah, I did this and I said that's why I did that. I didn't talk. I'm like, pay attention. I'm like, oh,
That's
you
why,
get me.
girl.
You get me. Okay.
Because I'm like, how do you love that sheep when that sheep is trying to cause you
Yeah,
harm,
yeah.
right?
Not. I'm not holy and sanctified. I make mistakes. I'm full of errors.
Yeah,
I'm faulty, and every day I try to just be better and do better. That's it. That's all I could do.
that's
But
all we can do.
and in
Yeah.
that, I ask for mercy, grace,
Mm,
and just try to
okay.
get up and do my best.
All
You
right.
know,
That's incredible. Well, keep going, girl, because there you
I'm
have a
trying.
lot.
I'm trying,
A
girl.
lot. I know.
I'm
So,
trying.
but make sure that you're taking care of you emotionally because you do a lot of
Yes.
emotional
Yeah.
draining work. So
Mhm.
make sure that you have a good foundation, like
Oh
some
yeah.
people in your corner that I don't know you do,
Definitely.
but
Yeah. No, definitely. That's definitely been a must. I have a great partner. My husband's been great, and he has the same heart. And so I think
mm,
for us, and having a good support system, having people that we could really
mm-hmm,
depend on, that you can really cry
mm-hmm,
to, pray with, be with, vent to,
mm.
because it's so important. And we take care of ourselves. We work hard, but we play hard too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know.
Unapologetic about it. People would say all this stuff. First, go, first of all, I earn my own money.
Thank you.
I work.
And
I
hello.
make money, and if I want to take a vacation, I'm gonna take it,
Hello.
wherever that is.
Hello.
I
And
haven't
if you want
go.
nice shoes, we're gonna buy nice shoes.
Thank you. Shoes you have, not enough, not enough. I'm in company that understands me. I feel seen today.
I
Thank
also
you,
told her nothing like that. That's how I'm
girl,
like, don't be going to
girl,
contact.
girl. Oh, yeah,
I
no.
no,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
no, no.
Okay,
I hear you. No,
okay.
absolutely.
I
All
know.
right. So, you have such a strong faith foundation. What led you to become a pastor? Because you were a reverend. So,
Yeah.
was it through the work or that came?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I'm third generation in my
Okay.
family. First woman, my grandfather and my father and my mother, and I grew up in a very strong faith home. Like everyone, I think I had to find my path. This wasn't what I want to do. If you ever meet a pastor that says this is what they want to do, that really wasn't their calling. Because I don't know, I have an older sister that she calls me Moses
Yeah.
all the time. She calls me Mrs. Moses because I was so resistant. Yeah,
Wow.
and then I married someone who's also third generation. Ironically enough, he was a little more accepting of his calling
Yeah.
than I was, but
Yeah.
I came a little bit more kicking and screaming.
Mm.
But then finally surrendered to the will of God, and I think that that was really important. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I took a step and it was the best thing I ever did. I think, my life is not my own, but to follow his will
Mm.
and do what I need to do. And so yeah, here I am.
Here you are.
Here I am.
All right. So we're a reverend and a doctor. And
Yeah.
then I know that through the work in Worcester, you were a consulwoman and you were the
Hmm.
one of the first
Yeah.
Latino, not one of the
Yeah.
first. You were the first.
I was the first Latina female.
Yes.
Juan Gomez was the first Latino, and then was the first Latina to be elected. And then I was the longest District 4 city councilor and the longest serving woman of color
Yeah, you
in
were in there
general.
for a while and I know
12
you
years,
you
yeah.
you you stepped down or
In December,
it,
been a year now. Hallelujah. People say, do you miss it? No, let's put it clear. People was like, "Do you miss it?" No, because
yeah,
I think anything that I loved about it, I'm still doing. I was doing
absolutely.
the work prior to. I'm going to keep doing
Mm.
after. I just don't have to deal with some of the other stuff.
No,
So,
absolutely. I mean, I don't think people recognize the amount of hate and vitriol that you faced on a daily basis. And let's be honest, by some of the folks that we should be working with,
it was
right?
brutal.
I can't imagine. I can absolutely imagine because I think you get the hate from outside,
Mhm.
but like when the threat is inside your house,
Mhm.
it's a whole nother story,
Yeah, yeah, and then there's always the split community. Like
girl.
I wasn't, I was too black for some, not black
Girl,
enough for others, too
girl.
indigenous for some, not indigenous. I was never too, and I said, we can't have it both ways. I remember one time when when first Black Lives Matter first came out, not after, but when it first came out, I remember there was this whole thing that happened at the city hall, and this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I remember you had people that were like, "Oh, she's too pro police," and then the other people on the other side, "Oh, she's defund police." I mean, it was all this craziness. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm either one or the other, but I
Like,
can't be people.
yeah, because I think sometimes folks, if you don't agree with them exactly
Yeah,
100%, it's just like you're either too much or you're too little.
yeah,
But I found one of the hardest thing to do is to please people.
yeah.
And
No, and I
that's
just
not should not be your life's goal.
no, not
I'm a
me.
please God on myself.
Yeah,
And then if you get pleased in the interim, hey,
that's
hallelujah.
the beauty that the older you get, the less you care.
Yeah.
The less it's like when I say I'm telling you, whoever's becoming 50, embrace it because there's
Yeah.
something about when you enter your 50s, it's
Really?
like,
I can't wait then.
girl, no, stop. My lady, my queen here because 50 is young and be able to deal with her.
Listen, because I'm there.
No,
Like I am so there
oh no,
before. So
no way.
you're telling me at 50, I
It
get
gets
even
even
more
worse. I thought I was before. No, it gets even
like,
worse. Yeah, girl, you got. It's like you got stripes, and
Lord,
like y'all better pay attention, and be correct. Come correct.
thank you. 50, I no longer fear you because
Come
I'm gonna
correct.
come for you. Because
Yeah.
like you have to, and like I have to stand firm because I remember when I came to America as
Mhm.
a teen,
Yeah.
and it was very like so I've always been like our language in Jamaica is English. And we do have the dialect of Patois, which we speak,
Mhm.
like when we talk or according to my sister, we chat it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You practice.
so when I came to America and I came to school here, like, I was still obsessed with straight A's and, tournament
Mhm.
work. So like the Jamaican population, like they were not very kind to me. They say
Mhm.
I was trying to act white.
Oh
They
God, yeah.
like I spoke to like I did not have an accent. I didn't set out to lose my accent. I never really had one. I
Mhm.
remember like the first time I met my brother at the airport in New York and he said something to me and I answered him and he was just like, "Where's your accent?" And I'm like, I wasn't trying to lose it. It was just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I just didn't have one. And then you
Yeah.
have some people that's from Jamaica that's been here,
Mm-hmm.
for like ever, and they still have that the strong accent. Like it is what it is, and I'm not gonna affect it. I'm
No.
not gonna like. I've always been
Mm-hmm.
comfortable being me, and I'm so grateful for
Yeah,
that because otherwise I wouldn't be who I am today.
exactly.
But I remember I wasn't Jamaican enough for them, and of course to the whites I'm too black, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like I'm either going to have to be who I am very
Mm-hmm.
firmly or constantly become a people pleaser. Like when I'm in the white space, try to
Oh,
do this
yeah,
and I'm like, no, I don't have any time for that. And I'm like,
exactly.
I'm so grateful. I don't know if it's I was a middle child, but I'm so grateful that I've always been able to say, you know what? I'm just Suzanne.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Exactly.
so
No,
I
definitely.
will be at the barbecue and the cookout, but if you invite
Mm-hmm.
me to the White House, I'm gonna throw on a gown. I'm up in there
There
too.
you go.
Like,
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. I definitely agree.
exactly. So that, and I always find that folks that are
Mm-hmm.
challenged about my blackness or lack of blackness, that's their personal issues. Like,
Yeah.
that's not my job.
No, it's true, and I think that's always been really a challenge. I think, I mean, I grew up in Worcester, and I don't have the Worcester accent, and
Like,
I
I
don't
know,
put them in
right?
the car, so I mean, so this whole kind of thing, or if you don't speak the Spanish well enough for us, so I'm not really Puerto Rican,
Like,
and this whole
girl,
thing. Yeah, it's like
stop.
it's yeah, it's like I think it's such a challenge when you come. I always say I had such an identity issue, right? Because I was born in New York, raised in New England with a Hebrew name, and I'm Puerto Rican. I had some identity issues, and it's like seriously, God
Thank
have
you,
mercy.
Suzanne.
It's really, it really just did me over. God have mercy. But
Yeah. It's
yeah,
Suzanne,
yeah.
not
It's like
Sarah.
the
Yeah.
original name before it was changed to Sarah was Sarai and Abraham.
Yes.
Then the Lord changed it to Sarai and Abraham,
Mm,
to
yeah,
Sarah
girl.
and Abraham. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's the whole thing. But
It's a whole
yeah,
thing, but yeah,
but it
no.
was definitely a challenge in there. But I
Yeah.
think with all of that I went through, I don't regret it.
No,
I don't regret a moment. There were so many times like I said in my speech, I said I laid it all out that last day, everything.
you
Some
did.
people that wanted me out and they didn't get me out. I left on my terms, not on their
Absolutely.
terms as much as they wanted. There were the times I wanted to quit. Oh my
Mm,
God, yeah. There was times I cried myself to sleep. There were
mm-hmm.
times I was just kneeling before the Lord, just
Mm,
all He could do was hear the sighs and the
mm-hmm.
whimper of my cry. And those were my prayers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then, I realized, I'd always know he'd always show me why I
Mm-hmm.
was doing what I was doing
Mm-hmm.
and just kept on. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and then knew that it was a time a lot of people questioned when I left, like, 'cause, I had already had political leverage. I had
Mm-hmm.
political capital. I had been there and worked. I was already becoming
Mm-hmm.
one of the senior counsel. Um, but I do believe that for everything there is a season. And this was something that I felt like I said I was commanded and commissioned, and
Mm-hmm.
this season of my life was done. And it
Mm-hmm.
was time for a different season.
No, listen, absolutely. I get that. Mine
Mm-hmm.
was not as, as when I came out of retail and left a
Mm-hmm.
really good paying job to become an entrepreneur. I mean,
Exactly.
believe me, and many folks didn't understand. I still don't sometimes, but like I was done. I felt like, and there was
Yeah.
higher I could have gone. Like you said, you could have become a
Mm-hmm.
senior leader and I could have gone back into the
Exactly.
district manager role and things like that. But I felt like I was done. There was
Mm-hmm.
no joy in it for me anymore. I didn't get energized wanting to go. I was just done. And there were some other factors that I think that just really
Mm-hmm.
pushed it to the next level that allowed me to say it is time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what folks need to understand sometimes, as long as you are alive, you have room to do so much more
Mm-hmm.
and so many different things. And even though God has ordained a path for us, there's nothing that we're going to do that's new to Him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even though it's new to us, and you're like,
Exactly.
wait a minute, be in this till I die, and they dragged out my cold dead
Mm-hmm.
body. God already knew that there was this set
Yeah, and I knew
time.
there would be a set season, and people,
Absolutely.
when there was a time that the state rep seat was open, and I said, no, that wasn't what I was set out to
Mm,
do. There was a time when the Senate seat was open that people were asking me, and I wasn't looking, even the mayoral seat, like I wasn't looking for that.
no.
That wasn't the calling.
Mm.
And so to many people, I knew very clearly what I needed to do, and I think by the time I left, I had set out to do what I needed to
You
do.
had
It was a
accomplished what
different,
you wanted.
yeah,
You had accomplished what you
and what I
wanted to
needed to do, and
accomplish. Yeah.
it was time to do other things. It was
No,
time to
absolutely.
time for a new season.
Absolutely. So
Mhm.
let's talk about some of those other things. You mentioned, one of your biological,
Mhm.
child, and, I'm glad you brought that up, because you are a mother.
Yes,
and you
our
have
best role.
like your best role. And girl, I don't even know that you.
So I gave my husband an out. And I said, if you don't want to get married, you out because I can't guarantee you that I want children.
Wow.
Can you believe it? I'm like, yes,
And then you have like a kid.
yeah, exactly. And she absolutely loves being a mom bear.
Yeah.
I love being a mom, and I love my children. They're all adults, and my
Hmm.
husband and I are technically empty nesters,
Yeah.
and enjoying grandkids now. But yeah, definitely love it.
So you're done now, no more kids?
Yeah, I think so. Now we're in the grandparent.
Grandpa, like it's a good age.
Yeah, we're in
Yeah.
the
Like
grandparent stage where we can like take it ice cream. Come on, my husband
Dory,
says,
yes.
yeah, my husband says how times have changed. I'm like, I'm in my
Listen,
prime now.
listen, my mother, I love her. And, I will tell you, she was a strict
Yeah, me too.
parent. And it's just like with my kids, like they're like, if I even raise my voice at them and they're sniffing, it's like, oh, what's wrong? You
Yeah,
want a cookie? No, mom. They don't want a cookie because
yeah,
you beat me.
yeah.
And I just raised my voice at them and they're getting a
Yeah,
cookie.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, for real. I'm with you, girl. Yeah, and I'm in the fun grandparent stage now.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm
that's
enjoying it.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome. So I know that you have, as I mentioned, you do have a lot of kids and they're,
yeah,
doing many different things and you're very
hmm,
proud and
yeah,
just talk about, what it's like to be a adoptive mother and,
yeah,
and all of that. And it's, because there's so many kids that are
hmm.
out there, like sometimes I can't even look at the statistics just
Yeah,
to
no, I've been really
see.
blessed, I think once I had biological children, I think my husband and I knew that we at some point would want to do that. And when the time came, I think it happened very organically. And
Mm-hmm.
we then began to work with unaccompanied refugee minors.
Mm-hmm.
The irony is that I've become not only I have a bond with them, but I've had the privilege of meeting, I would
Mm-hmm.
say 75% of my children's families and
Yeah,
mothers.
you
There's
talked about
only
that.
three I haven't met yet.
Yeah.
Well, technically, one that I haven't even met video. I've met them all.
Mm.
Two of them I've been through video.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, just a month ago, I went. We were able to
Really?
bring one mother from Burma down, and
Oh
so
my
she's now living
goodness.
with my son. So we met for the first time
Oh, that's
about a
wonderful.
month ago, which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
my oldest son that I'm very very close to. So him and I are he's
Mm-hmm.
definitely the apple of my eye. Um, and it was great to be able to have his mother come down. And I
Mm.
would always say, one day we can have your mother come down. And right now they're in the middle of a civil war, so it was
Mm.
really
Jeez.
beautiful to be able to have her come
Mm.
down. So now we have I have two parents in Burma and one
Mm.
in Guatemala that I haven't met in person. One
Mm-hmm.
in Guatemala I haven't met in person. I've
Mm-hmm.
met through video, but not in person.
Yeah,
But I like we've become like one big
you
family.
do.
Yeah.
You do.
We
Like,
got really close.
yeah.
One of my son's father was having some surgery, and the night before I was on the phone with my son and him and my husband
Mm.
and his mom, and we're just praying together and just telling them he's
Yeah.
well, and we're in the family chat. So they're
Mm.
all like it's like one big family to me.
Yeah.
They're my family.
That's
Even if
it.
I go and I visit one of the countries without them, like I
Mm-hmm.
make sure and I'm visiting, pending
Mm-hmm.
where I am in that country, I'm visiting them even
Mm-hmm.
without my kids.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, cause like adding, like we are, from the
Yeah.
Caribbean, right? Listen, my sister be like, "Oh, that's your cousin." I'm like, if we really dig in, they ain't my cousin, but
Yep. No, these mamas have been, they gave me a
they're
beautiful gift.
family.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
gave me a beautiful gift. They gave me a beautiful gift of
Mm.
allowing me to be part of, to help them
Mhm.
raise their child and entrust me with that. And so I'll forever be indebted for them
Mhm.
for allowing
Mhm.
me to be able to,
Mhm.
love their children. And I would hope that if there was anything that, I thought of me, God
Mhm.
forbid if it were me in another circumstance, would someone have taken care of my child,
Yeah.
you
No,
know? So that I
absolutely.
think they know, like, legitimately have like a love.
Mhm.
And have bonded because of that.
Mhm.
I respect their culture that and never to me it was never a replacement.
Mhm.
My husband and I were never to replace that family. It was to be
Mhm.
part of it, and
Okay.
it's been such a blessing for us.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. Your mom, I've seen thing where like things like Jada Pinkett Smith and a couple
Mhm.
folks that, they say like when they're like they'll say like a bonus mom or something like
Oh,
that.
wonderful.
So we always want to make sure that you
Yeah.
honor their family
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
but absolutely that you are also family. So, and that's the thing is, it's like
Mhm.
family is not always the ones that you're born into, right?
Oh,
Like
definitely.
family is sometimes the family that you choose. So, and that's incredible. Like I love hearing about that because I think that there's such a need to foster and to adopt.
Mhm.
And as like older kids,
Mhm.
Latino kids,
And that
Black
was our
kids
thing. We
are
wanted to
very
have
hard.
Latino, we wanted to
Yeah,
have older males and
yeah.
because we knew that that was going to be
They
the challenge. Older males were going to
they
be the
don't really get
challenge.
adopted as
Yeah.
often.
And we even foster care system we knew. So we've
Yeah.
gone mainly with just,
Hmm.
males because it was just the ones that were I knew were going to be a challenge. And then we did the unaccompanied refugee minors because we knew like they were here without their families. So
Yeah.
essentially you better be in it for the long haul, right?
Yeah.
It's not just 18 and you're done or whatever
Yeah.
the system because you essentially have become their family because
Yeah.
they're not here with their family.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Awesome. Thank you. So, you're no longer in
Mm-hmm.
the political sphere, but I mean,
Hence the relaxed space.
hence
Yes.
the fabulous like online perfection, right? But I think you can't be alive without being aware of what's happening politically.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
Yes.
blessed to moderate a panel with you and a
Mm-hmm.
couple other folks in the
Yes.
community around voter suppression and voting.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like
Yes.
personally, I'm not going to speak for you, but I know the election just was absolutely not what I was
Mm-hmm.
hoping
Yeah.
to. And I'm still dealing with it. And I think like
Mm-hmm.
your work is going to be even more critical, because there's a lot of vulnerable communities that are really concerned about
Yeah.
the incoming administration.
Very,
So
very concerned. I'm concerned on the educational system, right? The
yeah.
educational system, the increase, they're already building larger prisons. They already started the construction and
Jesus.
contract for some of the prisons. The issue of immigration is huge.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's just it. I think healthcare is going to be highly affected. Um, I think we're just going to continue to go backwards. But I think we've been here before. I did kind of
Hmm.
a little workshop, like really understanding that many of us have been here. That's one of the things when you've lived or in
Hmm.
already half of a century that you've kind
Yeah.
of lived, and in the times and the eras that I've
Loop.
lived, that it's almost like we've been here before.
Hmm.
I wish we didn't have to struggle. I wish we didn't have to fight. I wish we weren't having to be strong and resilient. But that's unfortunately we don't have an option. And so I would just want a better world for as crazy as it is, but you want something better for your kids. I want
I
something better
do.
for my kids, my grandkids. I don't,
I
and so
do.
we keep fighting and we're not where we ought to be. We're not where we should be. And in many aspects, we're right back where we were in many, it just is different, a different color, right? A different, different collar, as we say, is the same dog, different collar. There's an
Mm.
expression in Spanish. And I think it's a matter of like buckling up and figuring out. But the reality is that we have to know that part of it has to be that we've ignored many things.
Mhm.
When people say, "Oh, I'm not really political, I don't talk about politics, I don't," listen, you are because people are dictating laws and policies that affect you each and every
Absolutely.
day. So you essentially hire and fire in your election, and you need to be educated to some degree because
Mhm.
these things are affecting you and your child. Like, imagine if I went to your house and told you what to do with your daughter. By the way, when I go in your house, I'll be like, yeah, no, no, that's not what your daughter's gonna wear. Your daughter's gonna wear this. Your daughter's gonna do this. You'd be looking at me cross-eyed. You don't care how good, friends we are. You'd be like, huh?
Mhm.
Essentially that's what they're doing, right? They're
Yeah.
influencing our educational system, our health system, everything. And yet they're telling us what to do and we're just silly idling by. So we get caught up with this thing that it's about life and politics. No, you need to learn what's happening and
Mhm.
know what you can do about it.
Mhm.
um and that's one of the reasons why I don't have shackles and chains anymore, right?
Mhm.
Because people stood together and there was a fight, and there was a rebellion, and we have to be able to know, when tyranny is law, then revolution is necessary, as Albizu Campos
100%.
stated. Yeah, and so I think it's
100%.
so important that we get involved. You don't have to get involved in everything, but find what you're passionate about.
Mhm.
Find what you care about, think about it, and do something about that because
Absolutely.
we're going to see some challenging times
Mhm.
ahead. People think, and and we've lived some of that before. We've lived through Reaganomics
Mm,
and the recession at the time, and like I said, during the epidemic, housing crisis, needle exchange. I mean, heck, there was times when they were doing forced abortions in Puerto Rico, right? They
Jesus.
they they piloted the pill, right? Was
Mm,
done there with our women with the guinea pigs. So I mean, these weren't that. This wasn't that long ago. It wasn't until like, I mean, think about it. Puerto Rico is still property of the U.S.
mm,
They could essentially sell it off if they want to,
yeah.
right? Like, so it wasn't until the 90s that we saw finally the military leave Vieques, and we're seeing some of the highest cancer rate because of the bombing and the chemical
Jesus.
infestation that's happened on the island. Some of the highest cancer rates that we've seen that were environmental. So I mean, when you see that none of this has been new, I think we got comfortable and we were seeing some level of progress, which is great.
Hmm.
And we should celebrate the progress, but then many people started drinking the Kool-Aid,
Mm,
and then unfortunately, in the political realm, people are not educated. It becomes the popularity, right?
hmm. It does.
It becomes like who you like and not really policy. Just even in council, let's even think about council, even think about like somebody may support somebody. Let's say, let's put myself, there's somebody who supports me and whatever, and I could ask them, well, what were the 3 votes that I did that were crucial in the last 3 months? They may not be able to say it, right? It's kind of like who shows up
I
or
like you, I
whatever.
vote for you.
Yeah, exactly. And you have these things that are like this popularity and then are not looking at the voting
Hmm.
and not looking how they're voting across the board, not looking at the comments that were made. I mean, there was a school committee member that talked that said, I think in one of the last two school committees, that said, "Oh, the Asians all want to become doctors," something to that effect. No one picked that up. It's like so discriminatory, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's still a bias, it's still a stereotype, it's
Hmm.
still. So I mean, I think it's crucial that people pay attention to what's happening. This whole issue of the economics and whatever, then know what's going to happen with your tariff. People don't know about that. We have to get educated,
Hmm.
and people are not, they're not paying attention.
So ask you this because I know that there's been an intentional push, or well, not by the council, but by folks in the community said to show up at these meetings.
Hmm.
And do you think that there'll ever be like town halls or things like that where folks can just educate the community about some of the things that are happening without the contention or without the biasness or whatever, but
Hmm.
like just straight talk, like you just sat here and educated
Hmm.
me about several things. And I think those are important, like to
Yeah.
have like folks can show up, because you're right, a lot of times they're voting, they don't genuinely don't know what they're voting for.
Hmm.
And even with the local election, folks, I was like, I don't even vote in the local election, because if you look at certain things, a lot of our people don't show up to vote.
No, it's
And
terrible. I would say that all the time. And remember too, like, yo, you can't pick up the phone and be like, Mr. President, you can't do that. But at the local level, you can
you
talk to your local
can.
elected officials. And remember, local
Absolutely.
affect state, affect federal, local elections are so
Hmm.
important. And if you pay attention to what was happening,
Hmm.
this is why when you see certain people, like there was a race in South County, and there was one party that poured way in there because they knew
Yeah.
they poured into that local election because they knew that that seat mattered in many aspects that was going to affect at the state level, that then affected at the federal
No,
level,
absolutely.
and people don't know this. So I think it's so important that we learn on that. And I love that idea. I know when I was in council, I tried to do that as much as possible during committees, being able to have conversations when there was issues that happened across the board, having a conversation at City Hall or some forum to be educated. And I think we need to have more of that just for people to be able to learn and figure out what is actually happening, because we get so caught up in emotion of what's happening. And
Hmm.
I get it. I get mad too. I get
Yeah.
frustrated. I'm disappointed, I'm hurt, I'm disillusioned, but okay, what are we going to do about it?
Hmm.
What are we going to do about it? And what can we do? What is
Hmm.
realistic? And the reality is we need to show the pressure. We
Hmm.
need to show the pressure in moving forward. And it's exhausting. And I think what happened is that many people that have stood up in the past have been targeted.
Absolutely.
They've been targeted.
Absolutely, I've seen it. Like the last election for Worcester was so contentious. It was so awful.
Hmm.
So many threats. It was awful.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that next year is just going to be the same, because it's
Oh yeah.
already started. And I think, but I think a town hall would be beneficial to, like, highlight, because these things we can
Mhm.
see how folks voted on things, right? So these
Mhm.
things aren't secrets. So just highlighted, all this, and like the things that you care about. Oh, the stoplight on your street. Yeah.
Exactly.
The speed bump, which I need one
Mhm.
on the street because they act
Yeah.
like it's 600 or
Mhm.
whatever the 100 is.
Yeah.
So these are things like we have to get connected, and like folks know, like it does matter. But again, a lot of folks that I've spoken to, they're like, yeah, no, it doesn't matter.
One
Like
of
it
the things
really
that
does.
one of the things that they used to do here, and I think we got to bring it back, is through different coalitions. I remember through Worcester Interfaith and other coalitions, we'd get together and we would do forums on specific topics, and
Absolutely.
they would do a report card and
Hmm.
how people were graded on, and through
Hmm.
there you could see where they stand. It was either, whether
Yeah.
they were on that particular issue where they stood, and
Yeah.
maybe that wasn't the issue, and whoever,
Yeah.
if that's what they believe, but at least at
Hmm.
least for you, how
Yeah.
they stood on something one way or another. And that's what we need to get back
No,
to.
I think to start it, but I
Mhm.
think there's some very highly active and knowledgeable folks that,
Yeah.
and I get it. It's hard work. It's a thankless work. Uh,
Mhm.
but, I think we owe it to the community to continue that.
Mhm.
So no, thank you so much for that. I can't believe we've been chatting for so long, and I
I know.
literally haven't even hit like some of the things that I wanted to talk about, but I do have two things because we are, at the top of the hour.
I'm gonna have
So,
to come back.
like you, girl,
Part two.
like part two, you should, and I'm gonna say it right now. I'll have her back in Women's History Month because I
Yes,
like to have phenomenal women. So Women's
I'm
History Month
down.
in March, we're gonna have you come back and talk about it because I really actually wanted to talk about some of the things that you're doing with
Yes.
culture redesign because I know that you
Yes.
teach so much, and I
Yes.
literally don't even. I want to ask you, but I'm like pulling back. So
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
talk
yeah.
a little bit about
No,
what you
I
do.
started doing,
Like,
guys. Yeah, I started doing consulting on workforce development and diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging,
hmm
and partnered up with Cultural Redesign with Adriana Vagado. And so we're both like women led, and we're out there just doing the work, right? Dismantling and hopefully creating a more diverse and culturally appropriate workforce. That's one, and educating. I'm also doing some education on trauma, among with
hmm
other things. Um, and so doing that, and then I'm also opening a nonprofit. So I have Zach's House, which is in honor of my
hmm
son that passed, and so we're now, actually, my husband and I were just talking this morning. We have our cabinets and kitchen in. My goal is to, within the first 6 months of the year, that we'll have
Okay.
our first tenant in there. So it's a dorm like, the real
Mm-hmm.
quick is it's a dorm like house for males that were once upon a time unaccompanied refugee minor or refugee or asylum seekers that are now becoming independent and looking
Mm-hmm.
for a place to live. And we'll be at fair market rate. We'll be renting rooms at fair market rate, and then providing supportive services along with it. So I'd love to just come and just talk about Zach's
That's
house, which
it.
would be
All
great.
right. So that's it. Because I know that's what I'm saying. I haven't even hit it. There's culture redesign. We have the Zach's House, which is the
Yeah,
non. So we'll talk more about that in
yeah,
March. And, so I just want to end because I know you are a world traveler. You travel for work and then you travel for pleasure.
both.
So
Yes.
so in 1 minute, we're going to talk about like just what, what was your, like, how did you become this person who loves to travel? Like, how did that come about? And just some of the
Yeah.
places you've been.
I think I love people, I love culture,
Mm,
and I love this amazing world that we live in that God created. And I think that it's opened my world. It's really hard to people talk all this stuff, but they've never been like, in order for me to understand
mm.
why people got on a boat risking their life in the middle of an ocean, I
Yeah.
had to see it firsthand. And all of a sudden I now understood. I tell that story all the time, which when we come to Women's History Month, I'll have to tell that story about a woman who
Absolutely.
really taught me a lot. That was
Absolutely.
eye opening. So being able to expose to other cultures, other community, like you hear about Cuba, all this stuff, but when I
Hmm.
went to Cuba, it was a whole different ball
Wow.
game. Or my experience in Colombia, my experience in Rwanda, I learned so much in
Hmm.
Rwanda, like their philosophy, their environment, the way that they are recovering, and
Hmm.
the way they keep conversations about that genocide, and their concept is never again. And you're never going to learn until you're there, learning from the community. And so I just have like a love for culture and people, and
Okay.
do it for work. I get to get an opportunity to do some work. Hopefully I'll be going to Kenya and Uganda in the next year.
Hmm.
I have a couple projects there that I'm working on, and
Okay.
see
All
what
right.
I'll be doing for fun.
All right. we're in March. We're gonna have to talk about just some of the places that you
Yes.
visited, things like that. But sorry, thank you so much
No, my pleasure.
for
Thank you
being
for
on the
having
show.
me.
And love to have this opportunity to talk. I learned so much, just sitting and listening to folks like you, folks that I admire. So thank you for all the work that
Thank
you've
you.
done and all the work that you're continuing to do. And,
Yeah.
honestly, like you inspire me, just to see phenomenal women out there like doing it and knowing that, your life wasn't perfect. You weren't born with a silver spoon,
Hmm.
but you continue to place your faith in God
Yeah.
and continue to care about
Yeah.
humanity.
And thank you for creating these spaces. I think, once upon a time, these spaces, I lived in a for us, right? So thank you for creating these spaces. I think that's really important. And so, really grateful to you for these spaces for us.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, if you tuned in, and I hope you have, this was the lovely Reverend Dr. Sarai Rivera Sandoz. And, just an amazing conversation that we will pick up again in March because just an hour is just not enough time to just really even touch on half the things that she is and she's doing. So, I'm always so honored to be in spaces with phenomenal women that inspire me. So, stay tuned. There's so much coming from her. We're going to talk about Zach's house in March, so tune in
Yeah.
and we'll have more info then and all of that. But listen, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to be in your homes or your work, or if you're driving home in the car. Hopefully, you're not watching and you're listening. I enjoy this opportunity to bring phenomenal people to you. So, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, it's Positive Vibe Studio. It's Facebook and Positively Suzanne. We are looking for new sponsors for next year. So if you're interested in being a sponsor of the show, please reach out to us. Thank you to our executive producer and sponsor, Paul Anderson Photography. And until next time, this is Positively Suzanne saying, stay safe. And Reverend Dr. Sarai Rivera Sandoz.
Peace.